I'm Tara, and we're excited to bring you the second episode of the Flying RuNR podcast. This week, we bring you an update on the London Marathon Ballot, and then we are looking forward to the Berlin Marathon just 10 weeks away. Are you ready to run it? Let's go.
Welcome to the thrilling world of the Flying RuNR, brought to you by the Marathon Mates.
The Flying RuNR. I'm Tara, one part of Team Alice Running, and I'm joined on the panel today by Tim, and the other part of Team Alice Running, and Tony, the actual brains of this podcast. The panel today, we're going to be sharing our tips and our tricks around running, performing all sorts of magic to ensure that this podcast is available on all various platforms that you are listening to us on. So I'm just wondering, how are you guys going this week? And most importantly, how have you pulled up from the Gold Coast last week?
I'm fantastic, Tara. I've pulled up really well from the half marathon. The week's been awesome. Finished, of course, with a catch up with some great friends and yourselves there on Sunday. So been feeling good. And Tim, yourself?
Yeah, no, this week's been, I guess the last week's been a bit of a recovery week for us. We started off with just light stretching. I guess the day after the marathon, we did a 10K walk after the double. And then we had a fairly light week with just some basic stretching. And then we started to do some more running on Saturday at parkruns. So we attended Bunyaville Parkrun, our home parkrun, where it coincided with one of our friends who was celebrating her 250th parkrun. So if Lyndall's listening, well done on 250 parkruns. It's a big effort.
Absolutely. That's
1,250 kilometres of parkrunning. So big effort from Lyndall. And then we backed it up the next day. Tara and I, we went out for, how far did we go on Sunday?
We just did a 12K run, just in our normal running area. And it was just a nice, quiet, easy run. It was quite slow paced, and stopped and chatted to all our friends along the way, as we always do.
Yeah, so it was really just an easy week for us, I think, last week. We're mindful that you get a lot of micro tears in your muscles. You tend to have a lot of bruising, a lot of swelling in places that you probably don't always think about. And a couple of light weeks after a marathon is not a bad thing. For the body.
It's actually good to just recharge, isn't it? So in terms of training, Sharon and I, we aim for about 42 Ks on like a low week, I guess, or a normal week. And that 12K was our long run again on Saturday. So 12K seems to be the thing. You can't just run a 10 anymore. It's got to be a 12. So.
Well, for us, it coincides with landmarks. So we know from where we start at a pier, it's 6 Ks to the bridge, and then you turn around at that point and it's another 6 Ks back. Otherwise, if you're on the bridge, it's a 3K run over the bridge. So it is very much, based on landmarks for us. That's why 12 Ks becomes relevant.
And if we don't go to that 12K mark or the 6K mark out, we miss 3 or 4 running groups that start at the bridge, so we miss a lot of friends. So that's why we go all the way up to the bridge at least.
There's also other conveniences. There's toilet stops, there's water, and good views along the way as well. So we run out on Bayside of Brisbane here, where we get nice views of the water, and it's quite a spectacular location to go running.
So what races have we all got coming up next, I guess, is what, anyone doing jetty to jetty or Sunny Coast?
We're tossing up Sunshine Coast still at the moment. I put it in our plan for Berlin that we'd look at that as a 42K day. So if we were to do it, we'd probably potentially be doing the marathon. I've never done the jetty to jetty. A lot of people love that particular race out there on the Redcliffe Peninsula, and it's it scares me a little bit because people say there's a couple of hills and it's a pretty tough race. So we've never, we haven't shied away from it because we're scared of it, but it's just other things have come up, I guess.
And I guess with it being 2 weeks straight after Gold Coast, it's Tim and I, we always do it. It's more because it's just our stride out, we just take it easy on that one anyway. But we only do the 10Ks and we miss most of the hills. So
the hills aren't too bad. I don't know what you're going about. There's one hill on the way out at Woody Point, and it's about 2 and a bit Ks into the run. It's a long sort of incline for about 1 kilometre. And then from there, it's a nice sharp downhill to a flat section. Turn around at 5 Ks, and guess what? When you come back at about 7 Ks, there's a sharp incline. It tests the legs a little bit, and then it's a nice long, slow decline from the top of that down to about 2 Ks out, and then you can really hit it home. So we like the event. We see lots of people out there that we know. We're fairly local in that area. It's an area we train in regularly. We know the course, but as Tara said, it's a good hit out for us. 2 weeks after Gold Coast. We don't go too hard. We don't go silly on the distance. 10 Ks is a nice sort of comfortable distance for us 2 weeks after Gold Coast. But it's enough just to shake everything out, give us a bit of a test. In the past, we've done ridiculous times, really, really ridiculously fast times. I won't be doing that this weekend. I'll be looking to probably go a little bit easier and just focus on the long goal. We've got Berlin in a few weeks, which we'll talk about shortly. But 5 weeks time, we've got Sunshine Coast, where we'll step it up to a half marathon distance as part of our training longer term for Berlin and other things. So Jetty to Jetty is a really good event. I'd say it's one of the better ones in southeast Queensland. I really like it. It's run by the Moreton Bay Road Runners. They are a road running group that is out there. We see them regularly, but being run by runners gives the event a different perspective. They know what you need for a running race. They have, the right amount of volunteers, the right amount of drink stations, the right amount of, bling and all the stuff that you need that gets you excited about these races. But it's just a really good event. It's I don't know how many they get. How many do you reckon they get in the half marathons? Probably maybe 1,500 to 2,000, maybe 3,000. Maybe.
That's
and
good.
Then, probably not that many. Probably only about 2,000.
It is a small event, but it's a good event.
But the 10K's probably got about 3,000 or 4,000 runners in it, and then there's other distances as well. There's a 5 and a 3, I think it is as well.
Yeah, it's got a great reputation, and a lot of people love the event. So, and that's one of the bonuses when you've got those localized events that people just support regardless. So, one day we'll get there. But
absolutely,
the other good thing is the views on the course. It is stunning views. You're running right along the coastline. You're looking out over Moreton Bay. The sun's rising. You've got at times pods of whales or dolphins out there. Yeah. There's a bagpiper that they have that plays the bagpipes as well. Usually in most years, it's just a really good event.
Yeah, it really is. It is. But look, in other marathon majors or other marathon news this week, we've all run the marathon at London. I just noticed that the lotteries come out for that one. So that was held on Thursday just been. Highly recommend this event. It's very, very good. What are some of your recollections of this race, Tony?
Yeah, London was amazing. It was just... And the whole place was alive. There was just people everywhere. I landed there on the Thursday like we normally do, and it was just people everywhere. The race itself was great. The crowds were great. You run past some amazing landmarks, and it was just I've done 3 of the majors, and New York and London are on a par with what my favorite is. What wasn't so great was getting up early the next day to jump on a train and going to Amsterdam, but getting
especially being out with us the night before.
yes, and but getting to Amsterdam was pretty cool. So great race, and like you, Tara, highly recommended. If people do have London on a bucket list, certainly I'd be looking to get there. Yeah, as best
what do you
can.
reckon your highlight would be of that race? Tony.
Once again, the people that we went with, like even just and I know it sounds really corny for people that may not have been involved in tour groups and whatnot, but just doing a shakeout run on the Friday morning with a bigger group of people. Less people do the shakeout on the day before the marathon, of course, but just chatting with people, getting to know people, just a very slow, easy jog through a 5K course around, you know, the London Eye ultimately, which is where the shakeout was. And just little things like that just stick with me, and just hearing people's stories. And then, of course, having a couple of quiet beers after the event.
Well, we've got a carb load for that marathon, don't we?
So what's your memory, Tara? What's your key memory of the event?
Oh, look, I think my favourite part, apart from people trying to hand me alcohol as I'm running past them, I think my favourite was definitely going across Tower Bridge. The crowd support was just amazing. Like I don't think I've ever had that sort of crowd support. Around the Cuddy Sark obviously was amazing, but for some reason it was just Tower Bridge was just really got me.
It was iconic, wasn't it? It was iconic. And a tip for those people looking to run the London Marathon, Tower Bridge, there is a photographer as you're coming off it. Make sure you're ready for it.
Yeah. The other, I guess the other thing with all those things, like you're running across iconic landmarks or past iconic landmarks. So London, you start at Greenwich, where Greenwich Mean Time is 0. You then run down past the Cuddy Sark, which is a special ship in history as the fastest clipper between Australia and Great Britain in its day. You run down over Tower Bridge, you run past the Tower of London, you go through Canary Wharf, you come back past St. Paul's Cathedral, you come along the embankment and you hit Big Ben and you turn right, literally at the front of Big Ben in the House of Parliament. You keep going down, you go past St. James's Park on the right, you hit Buckingham Palace, you turn right, and then you finish on the Mall. And what I say to people with marathons, and particularly the big city major marathons, you never run past the really shitty parts of the cities. They really are hop on, hop off tours of the city without the bus.
Yeah.
And you can run them. You can take your time running them, albeit within the cutoffs. You can take photos, as Tara and I do, of all the landmarks as we're running around and get a bit of a tour.
The selfie king.
Yeah, you're not running past the busted up parts of the city in a lot of these major marathons. You are running past the iconic landmarks. You know, New York is one. You run through the 5 boroughs of New York. Tokyo, we ran through the iconic parts in Tokyo. And I'm sure when we get to Berlin later on, we'll be running through the iconic parts of Berlin.
Like the Brandenburg Gates at the end there.
Correct. So it's the really cool thing about these marathons is you get to run on open roads that you normally wouldn't.
Yeah. So obviously with the London Marathon lottery that has been held earlier, the lottery is just one of the ways of entering London Marathon for those that are interested in doing it. So it's literally that. You stick your name in a hat or in a drawer and they pull it out and hopefully you get it. Like really, it's really no different to that. It's like putting your name in a hat and they pull the names out. And I think there's like 500,000 people that apply for the London Marathon every year. Out of the lottery, how many did you say it was?
So I can give you some stats.
Thanks.
So there's this year alone. So it's for the lottery that's just been for next year in April when the London Marathon's on. There are approximately 17,000 ballot entries available for a field of about 45,000 runners. 578,374 people entered the ballot. That's
incredible.
So 578,000, 500,000 people entered for 17,000 slots. So it's about a 1 in 35 chance you've got.
Yeah.
And apparently for 578,374, I just rattled that number off the top of my head. 578,374 people is a new world record for the marathon for entrants entering via the ballot system.
Yeah.
Of those who entered the ballot, 53% were male and 46% were female, and just under 1% were non-binary athletes. So We're starting to see the categories beyond male and female being recognised as well. Of the 578,374, here's another number, 121,269 entrants were non-UK international runners. So about a fifth of the runners that applied for the ballot were international people, which means, that's what 80% of people were from the UK, which is a huge number for British running.
So I guess the other way that you can get into the London Marathon is by a charity.
Yeah.
And so or a travelling fit group, or a tour group, which is how we all go through ours, because we like the company, obviously. Through the charity entries, that's quite an expensive way of doing it too, isn't it, Tim?
Yeah, so my understanding is the way the London Marathon works is they sell those charity spots to charities. So going back to the ballot, if you're successful in the ballot, you must pay an entry fee pretty much straight away to confirm your entry. Costs about £70 for a entry ballot for a UK resident, and about £146 for an international entrant. When you work that out into Australian dollars, what's that? £70 for a UK resident, about 150 Australian dollars, and £146 for international athletes is probably around about 200.
About 300.
Yeah, $300 Australian. So it's not expensive. It's not cheap. I would say it's somewhere in the middle price range there, but you have to pay that up front. Now, if you are in a charity, the charities work a bit differently. As I said, London Marathon sells their charity spots to the charities. And most of the entries that they actually have in the race are actually charity entries. The London Marathon is one of the world's largest annual charity fundraisers each year. And charity entries can cost anywhere upwards of £2,000 each. You have to apply to each of the charities, put your name down for them, and then raise money for that charity, and then hopefully be awarded your spot. Now, there's hundreds. There's a whole charity list on their website. It's pretty amazing how many charities actually get offered spots where you can apply to. And some of those charities, you see them. We saw them when we were running on the course. I'm sure you did as well, Tony, when you were running with Sharon. All their singlets, all their
fancy dress,
costumes, all that sort of stuff.
The rhinos, the firemen, the emergency services people. It's incredible.
And the thing with London Marathon, which it's like this with every charity that you go through, whether it be Tokyo or any of the majors, you can only apply for one charity spot. So you can't apply for multiple charity spots for that marathon. You can only apply for one per year. So that's another interesting fact there that I only just found out thanks to Robert Wang. And for those of you who don't know who Robert Wang is, we will discuss him later on in the show.
Just go on to Facebook and type into any running page, and he's usually on there. But the charities are big, and it is the world's largest fundraising event. It has raised, I don't know the exact amount, but it's hundreds of millions of pounds in its history, that event. And it's massive. We talk about the rhinos. For those who aren't aware, there are people out there that run in full rhino costumes. And when I say rhino costumes, they would weigh probably 10 kilos or more. They've got a full rhino head on top of their head that's made out of like a hard plastic material. They've got arms, legs, the whole lot. They look pretty cool. They get noticed in the crowd. But
if you go onto Team Alice Running on Facebook, you'll see some pictures of them, I promise.
But you just have to Google
lots of photos.
Just Google it as well. But on top of that, the other way you can get in is obviously you have your charity entries and you have your ballot. Then the other way is obviously being an elite runner or being in the tour groups or being an age qualifier. So there is an age qualifying process. They limit that to around about 6,000 entries. So if you're an age qualifier and you've met a certain qualifying time, you can apply that way as well. And as I said, then the other option is obviously being an elite runner, which we're not, and we don't talk about elite running really, or going through a tour organization. And again, I'm not sure what the entry numbers are, but I know someone like Traveling Fit, who we did have Murray Murr on last week. Our tours there, I think there's somewhere around about 100 runners that they take on their tours.
Yeah.
Or 100 people with their supporters and their runners.
Yeah. So I wouldn't think that all up the tour groups are making a huge difference in the overall numbers. Probably maybe a couple of thousand entrants all up.
Making a huge making a huge difference for those people that go through the tour groups, I guess. And one of the things that stands out when it's these majors is that there's a ballot in most of the majors nowadays, except for Boston, which is largely qualifying. But say something like the London Marathon, I mean, those figures are incredible. Almost 580,000 people.
578,374.
Yeah, I'll say just about 580,000 people went to the ballot. And then, you've got a 1 in 35 chance, which, that's pretty tough. And then even just going through a tour group or a charity, there is a selection process. There's usually a ballot process there as well. One of the things I find interesting, and as you know, one of my favorite podcasts is the Long Run podcast from the 40 Runs community in the UK. And there is a lot of discussion happens on that podcast about the ballot process. And there is a real chain of thought that people should be paying up front for when they apply, because there is almost this thought that there's a lot of people sitting around those financial districts on a Friday afternoon, maybe having a beer after a long week of work, that says, I might apply for the London Marathon. So there's a little bit of that goes on, which I find is fascinating. But the other thing I find fascinating is London Marathon events have just this year or last year, I think, took over the running of the Brighton Marathon.
Yes.
And the Brighton Marathon's on the 7th of April, which I think is 3 weeks before London. And a lot of the people that have failed in their bid to get in the ballot are now being sent emails from London Marathon saying, hey, you missed out. Sorry about that. You want to do Brighton. So from a business sense and a business opportunity, that makes a little bit of sense, I guess. Brighton's not as prestigious as the London Marathon, but
I think it's very scenic, though. I have watched something on the running channel regarding the Brighton Marathon, and it looks like an amazing course. It looks like something that I would like to do myself.
I think it was a really popular marathon, and then for whatever reason during COVID, I think they were not able to keep going. They had a lot of debt and couldn't survive. And London Marathon came in at the last minute and took them over. But it'll be interesting to see what London Marathon does. I think you're right. They're flicking people who don't get into the ballot across to Brighton. Yeah. I wonder if they'll start some sort of a double or something going forward, do the Brighton Marathon and then back up and do the London Marathon, or whether they'll do something special like that. I don't know.
It'll be interesting
to see how it all works out.
Well, if they're listening to this, Tim, they might steal your idea.
Well, you never know. Like we've gone viral after last week. So. I think we'll have Eliud Kipchoge listening to us on his long run shortly. I think.
On another note, all this talk of the London Marathon has actually got me thinking ahead for our next major event. So, Tim, Tony, and Sharon, and myself, we're all doing the Berlin Marathon on the 24th of September, which we're really excited about, in 10 weeks. 10 weeks. 10 weeks. Oh, my goodness. Okay, right. We better start getting training happening there. Are you guys getting excited about it?
Very much so. Very much so. And to me, and it's interesting because there are many variations of training plans that you can do for a marathon. Some people have a 20-week plan. Some people have a 16-week plan. Some people 12. But 10 weeks makes it real all of a sudden. And one of the things that I subscribe to here is that, when you're running a marathon or a half marathon, I'm one of those people that count up. So that's 1 down, that's 2 down, that's 3K down, 4 down. But all of a sudden, when you get to 10 to go, you start counting down. Okay,
Yep.
9 to go, 8 to go, 7 to go. I'm sure that there are probably some people that run the first K of a marathon and think, "You beauty, I've got 41K to go." I'm positive it's out there, but it's when you get to that 10K mark or the 10-week mark that you start the countdown, and that's what I love about the 10 weeks to go. Just 10 weeks to go, and here we go. Yeah. It's all exciting.
And I guess with Tim and I, we've got a completely different training plan to what most people have as well, because we run frequently throughout the year. Like this will be our third marathon, but obviously we've just come out of the Gold Coast Double. So we've just completed a marathon. So how do we reverse taper back into running and keep our bodies in a condition that we can run a marathon again in
10 weeks? Yeah,
that's right. So we've got a completely different training plan to what most people do for their marathons. And Tim still will run his marathon training plan different to mine, even though we run all of our marathons together. So we do different distances, we do different days, because
we do a lot of run by feel. So there's days there where Tara may not feel right, or I might not feel right, and so we'll up it or reduce our workload. But I guess for us, because we do so much running, we tend to keep a fairly good solid base at all times. So even like 12Ks for us on the weekend, just been as a bit of a recovery run, getting the legs turning over, was actually, I hate to say it because I know there's people out there that 12Ks is an awful long distance, but for us, we got to the end of that and it was like, oh, is that it for today? We felt we'd underdone our training for the day, because we tend to train consistently over longer distances, and sort of for us, a base run most weekends is somewhere around about a half marathon distance. Most weekends when we do sort of
now there's no speed to those half marathons. Just letting everybody know right now, there is no speed. There is no world records being broken. Sometimes I can take up to 3 hours to do that because I will be walking a good distance. It's more about time on the legs and getting those legs strong and your muscle memory, knowing how to keep going when they're tired. So to me, that's what it's about. It's not about speed. It's long runs aren't about speed for me. I know a lot of people they are, but not me.
Yeah, no, it's definitely right. I've said it to you many times, Tony, and I've said it to Tara thousands of times. Sometimes it's just about distance and time on legs rather than how fast you're actually running. It's not about pace for us. We don't run marathons for pace. We run them because we enjoy running. We enjoy the experience. We like running through new locations. But building up that leg strength and keeping the legs strong and building it up over duration is the key for us. And everyone's different, but for us, that's what works for us. And that's why we can sort of back out of one marathon campaign and go straight into another one. But again, we're listening to our bodies. If our bodies woke up on Sunday morning, this Sunday when we're doing jetty to jetty, and it's going, you know what, it doesn't feel like it. Okay, we'll just walk out the 10Ks. We don't care. If in 3 or 4 weeks' time we're still not quite right, well, we'll still take it easy and we'll just adjust ourselves as we go and our training. So we don't get too worked up by it. We do know that we have to progressively increase the distance and get it back up over that 21Ks up into sort of 30Ks, and that will sort of be where we max it out, is it on 1 or 2 long 30K runs, and then we'll taper at that point. But for us, it's just about time on legs. But everyone's different. I know you and Sharon run slightly differently.
We're probably, I mentioned this last week, we're probably in the best shape to really get ready for a marathon. So we're 10 weeks out or 11 weeks out as we are tonight or close to tonight. And we would never have started a 10-week block leading in with a half marathon or a 12-week block as we did last week at Gold Coast. So
and it was a fantastic time for you guys too.
Yeah, and but like you're saying, it's that would to us, we just wanted to do it easy and get some confidence back. So And for us to have that base, and this time we're structuring it a little bit differently. So we're going to do a concept that Sharon sort of brought to us, and it's all about a high week and then a lower week and then a high week, then a lower week, leading all the way. And then we start to taper. We do probably our biggest run 2 weeks out, and then we taper into the marathon.
Yep.
And the interesting thing for us this year is that we're sort of treating Berlin like our final long run before Chicago, because we're going to back up 2 weeks after and do Chicago. So we really need to make sure that where we're at now is just continues to improve. So, but it's, as you know, it's not just about training, isn't it? Especially when we're going overseas, and you know, it's about making sure we're comfortable and content with when we get into the city, what we're going to do when we get into the city, how much time we spend just resting and relaxing, you know.
But it's also about your food. It's your food intake. It's what clothes do you take, what's your access to washing machines. For somebody like yourself and Sharon, who is spending quite a fair bit of time away from home just for running, you've got 2 weeks in between, as you said. How do you mentally and physically prepare in between that? Do you do long runs? Do you do short runs? That's the hardest part for you guys, isn't it?
That's going to be really interesting, because we've never done it before where we've backed up 2 weeks after. So I guess, you know, our trip into Berlin, you know, we land in Berlin, fingers crossed, with no dramas with the planes, which we had with Boston, unfortunately. But we're planning, obviously, to get there 3 days before. So we'll be there on the Friday, I think, or the late Thursday night, or Sharon looks after all the travel arrangements. She's like the unofficial travel agent. She loves it. And then
that's me.
And then obviously you've got to do stuff like get to the expo, get all your paraphernalia that you need, and then I think the official 5K. I'm not sure if we haven't registered yet, because I don't think it's live yet, but the official 5K is on the Saturday. We're staying, of course, close to, you know, I like the course at Berlin because it looks like the start and finish are relatively close to each other.
Yep.
So instead of having to jump on a bus and bus it out to the start line, and where we're staying, I think, is in walking distance of both. So I'm pretty stoked with that. I don't do a lot of carving up. Like, I'm always reminded when we talk about carving up. I don't know if you're like The Office, but that time that Michael from The Office did a 5K fun run and he's carving up as he goes. And so that's always in the back of my mind when people say I've got to carb up. But you know, I carb up within what I know, that what I've got used to, my body needs for the next day. And the exciting bit about Berlin, of course, is, you know, no doubt we'll have a big celebration after the event itself, but then we're on a train to go to Oktoberfest. So that's going to be
that's the part that I'm actually looking forward to the most.
Get down to Munich for a couple of days in Munich and Oktoberfest. But it is interesting, that whole nutrition and carbo loading, and maybe it's a discussion point for another episode that we run. But Tara and I did at one stage see a nutritionist to help us with our running, and we can talk about that in another episode.
She's actually a proper sports dietitian.
And it was interesting because she talked about the whole carbo load piece and said, look, it's a bit of a fallacy, the whole you've got to eat tons and tons and tons of carbs. Really, all it is it's about adding a little bit extra to your meals in the days coming up to it. And she used to call them bakery days, the days leading into a marathon. So from 2 or 3 days beforehand, you might go to the bakery and have a Danish or a tart or something like that.
Interesting.
And that's all it is. It's just one extra piece that's maybe a bit of a carb that you can add into your diet. It doesn't need to be tons and tons. But everyone works these things out differently. I'm different than Tara. Tara is very religious in what she eats before a race. I'm not so much. I've got a stomach that can handle most things. Tara's is a bit more sensitive. So
I actually reduce the amount of food that I eat before a race. So, which is not like most people, but that I actually reduce it down. So
and I think Tim's right when we talk about trying to carb up in the days before. It's not just the night before that people have to think about it. And one of the things that Sharon and I have started doing now on a day before, on the day before a long run or a race, is we'll go get one of those little prepared meals from any of the major supermarkets, and I'll always look at how much carbs are in them, and I look for about that 88 grams of carbs, and then I'll have that at about, and most of the meals are either going to be a rice or a pasta. So, and I'll have that about as an early, like a pensioner dinner, and it'll be about 6 o'clock, and that just seems to be what's best for me. So
yeah, I agree 100%. Mine's like a lunch, early dinner, late lunch, early dinner, and then that's it for me as well. So
we also have a beer, one beer before the marathon. It's our special little treat that we do, and it doesn't seem to affect us as long as we remain
to one
beer and we remain hydrated.
I reckon that's an episode in itself. Do we drink beer before a marathon? It'd be good to get some people on to share their experiences. Yeah,
but it works. But you're talking about tours in Berlin and what we do. So we're going to arrive, I think, on the Thursday. We arrive in Berlin. We'll do a half-day tour on the Friday, stop by the expo, and then on the Saturday we've decided we're going to do a bike tour of Berlin, which could be a bit dangerous doing a bike tour.
Yeah, what can go wrong riding a bike before a marathon?
So we'll do the 5K welcome run, I think it's called, which is the pre-run where everyone comes out and does 5Ks before the marathon.
Yeah.
If we can't do a park run, we'll try and do a park run. If we can't, we'll do the 5K welcome run, and then we're going to go off and do a bike ride in the afternoon around Berlin to see the sights. So
how cool! So the day before the marathon, you're doing a bike ride.
Yeah.
Okay.
You
guys are crazy. Yeah, you do.
We've been told it's a fairly easy bike ride. It's fairly flat, and it's more just pedal to one location, get off, take a few photos, then pedal to the next location. We have a tour guide, and you go as fast as the slowest person. So
that'll be me.
Yeah. So we won't be going too hard, but we like to try and explore and see as much as we can. Thursday night, we'll probably get in there and shake out the jet lag if we've got any. Try and go out and have a few drinks and enjoy the city and explore it a bit. Friday night, we'll probably start to quieten it down a bit, and then obviously Saturday night is a bit of a pasta meal for us, and one beer and off to bed early for a big day the next day.
So I guess when you were talking about jet lag, how do you get over it, Tony? Like when you get somewhere, what do you do? Obviously, you drink lots of fluids on the plane, and I don't mean like alcoholic fluids, probably more water fluids. Keeping yourself hydrated. Do you put yourself, when you get on the plane, do you put yourself into the time zone that you're in, or do you sleep? How do you get yourself over that?
Normally, because it is such a long journey for us, and it's usually broken up, whether you stopping in, the Middle East, or whether you're stopping at Singapore along the way, you normally have to break up one of those journeys. And I don't necessarily, I'm thinking about what time I'm getting in to the city ultimately. So, and usually the first part of the trip is I have no plans. What happens, happens. If I get tired watching a movie, I'll just go to sleep. I'm not a big reader on planes, but I do enjoy the odd occasional movie. But once I get into that second segment of the flight, that's when I start thinking about, okay, I'm getting in at 7 o'clock. So I need to get some sleep during this particular flight. And it's a little bit more intention, I guess, around that. Or if I'm getting in the afternoon, I need to stay awake, especially during the back end of that particular flight. So that when I land, I'm landing with my body thinking that it's afternoon when it's afternoon. So there's no rocket science to it. I fail miserably a lot of times, especially more so coming back to Australia is when the jet lag really hits me. I know that after London, I was just wrecked. It felt like I was dead for 2 weeks, and it was just because I didn't go through that thought process and didn't put any planning into it. So, but this time, as you know, we were recently in England again, and this time was a breeze because of that whole concept of actually trying to understand the flights and the time zone. So, but yeah, hydration, making sure you're getting up and about as best you can. There's always a big conglomeration around the toilets in planes, so you always meet some new and interesting people. So
that's why it's important to choose your seats away from the toilets a little bit, close but not too close.
Yeah. So you can get up and walk.
I guess we're the same. We try to keep one eye on the time zone we're going to. But use the philosophy of if it's dark outside, you sleep. If it's light outside, you stay awake. And if it's going to be day when you arrive, you stay awake for that day. So, like when we went to London last year, we left midday to go via Singapore. We had a day flight to Singapore, so we stayed awake then largely. And then we had a night flight from Singapore all the way through to land at 6 o'clock in the morning in Heathrow, where we got to Heathrow. Yeah, we were a bit tired when we landed, but we made the point of staying awake that day and crashed out early that night, and we were fine afterwards. Other long-haul flights, we try to do the same. Try to get onto the destination time as quickly as you can and stay awake if it's daylight. If it's nighttime when you arrive, then go to bed when you arrive. And use that philosophy. I know when we go to Berlin, we're flying out of here on a 10 o'clock or 10:30 flight out of Brisbane at nighttime. We'll fall asleep. We'll sleep that whole leg to Qatar, to Doha. And then we've only got like a 6-hour flight or something from Doha to Berlin. It's a daytime flight. Even if we sleep for an hour or so on that plane, it's not the end of the world. We land at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We'll stay awake. By the time we get to the hotel, it's 3:30, 4 o'clock. Stay awake for a couple of hours and then crash out. And we'll be fine when we get there.
And who doesn't like a daytime sleep anyway, no matter which way you look at
it? Always got to have and funnily enough, I was just thinking about Berlin itself, and I was having a look at the course and try to understand. The course looks amazing. I can't wait to do it. Everyone says it's flat and fast. Well, and that's great. But one of the things that the 10 weeks allows you to do is actually pronounce some of those names correctly of some of these historical buildings that you're going. Because I was just looking at them and I'm going, my God, how do I say that? Or how do I say that? So I want them rolling off the tongue by the time we get there.
My only German word is Flughafen, which means airport. That's as far as I've got to the airport.
Yeah, okay.
So I guess with you, Tony, your taper, you said you're going to be about 2 weeks out. And that incorporates 2 marathons for you as well, I guess. So that's really good timing. Tim and I will probably be, I think we'll do our last long run, not the Sunday before we fly out, but the Sunday prior to that, if that makes sense. So about 2 weeks as well. We will do a shakeout sort of run before we fly, but we don't tend to do any speed or distance after that 2 weeks either. It's just keeping the legs moving and so your body remembers how to run. Sometimes you get a little bit paranoid that when you go somewhere after you haven't run for a while, you're like, oh, do I know how to do this again? And it's quite confronting or a bit scary sometimes to go, oh, I haven't run for so long, I'm going to forget how to do it. So,
Yeah, the taper is interesting. It's always, everyone has sort of different approaches when it comes to taper, but for me, it's not a stop, you don't do nothing, but it is about easing up and keeping the body and legs right. It's a time to get caught up on things like sleep, getting the gunk out of your legs, getting those final massages into the body, and just easing everything up and just getting match ready for that marathon day. But I know other people, they will do a full sort of running program that's separate, but during their taper program when they're still doing some speed work, they're still doing some intervals, they're still doing strides and things, but at lesser distance than what they would normally do. So everyone's a bit different.
So I guess on course as well, we're going to be. Do you take your own nutrition on course, Tony, or are you going to use the nutrition on course? Because I know that is it Morton?
Yeah, Morton's the
Yeah.
supplier.
So Tim and I use Morton now already for part of it. I'll probably still take my own other nutrition that I use, but will you be using that on course? Or
I've never been a big fan of gels, which has always been one of my real struggles when it comes to fueling during a marathon. Gels just don't sit well with me, and I think it's more of a mindset than anything. I've never had a tummy upset, but my mind's just saying, "Oh, what am I sucking on?" sort of thing. So I've started to utilize, and I'm sure the company is Precision Nutrition, but they do little blocks.
Yep.
And each one has they come in packs of 2. I cut them up, so I take half a block every 5Ks.
Yep.
And it just seems to sit better with me. It's a bit of a chew. I'll do it as I'm coming into a drink station. I'll chew it down. But the other thing that I'm now an absolute devotee of is pickle juice. So I'll always make sure I've got pickle juice on me, because I took that at Gold. I tested that the week before Gold Coast, a half, and it was like I once again something I just cannot describe. All of a sudden, I was getting a bit of a numbness in my calf, and I'm thinking, okay, well, I've got to try this pickle juice anyway. So guzzled it down, and I don't know whether it's mindset or whether there's something scientific that makes it all work, but my legs felt great.
Yep, I guess it's got the salts and electrolytes in there for you.
Yeah.
So look, you've got to use what works for you. How will you carry that on course then? Do they come in little containers or?
Yeah, it's a little 75 ml bottle, and so I'm once again. I never used to run with the belt. I tested it a couple of times, and fundamentally, it doesn't look good when you're already a bigger bloke. It's to have a little pouch around your guts just sort of adds a little bit more to it. But I've started to, 2 things. I've dropped 5 kilos in the last 3 weeks because I'm intentional about easing some of that stress when I run. But I'm also doing belts again, so I can fit, I think, 3 little 75 ml bottles of pickle juice into one of my belts, and I'm hoping that will see me through a major like the Berlin. So
perfect, excellent.
But yeah, those little blocks, and I'm sure it's Precision Nutrition, but I'll make sure I've got the right name when we talk again next week. But
yeah, I use blocks. They're the same sort of things, little jubey things, and
they're perfect for me. So
I can't do gels the whole way through either.
Yep.
Oh, I do like a banana at 33 Ks, which I found out in London. So that gives you superpowers, I found. Banana power, yes.
We had pretzels at, I think, the 22-mile mark in New York. It was just offered as we're coming through. I think it was Harlem or the Bronx. And we just needed some salt. And we were just amazed once again how beneficial that actually was at that particular time in the race. It had salt, it had a bit of carb loading. And, once again, I don't necessarily know if it's mindset or whether it actually worked, but we would never knock back a pretzel now in those later stages of a marathon.
You have to remember that for the Dopey Challenge next time, Tim. They do good pretzels. So I guess last week you shared a video from the Gold Coast Half Marathon with the 3rd place Kiwi runner Cameron Avery was swishing his drink cup into the he was running.
It's pretty cool.
We said that we would like to find out a bit more about Cameron and keep an eye on him as a Flying running adopted elite runner, I guess you call it. So what have you found out about Cameron since?
Well, he's 25 years old. He's got a huge smile on his face. He's obviously a New Zealand boy. So his world rankings, for the men's 5,000, he's reached the highest ranking he's ever had is 337. and he's currently ranked 710, but it does look like he's moving away from the 5,000 meters. It's interesting when you look at his personal best times. He's obviously done a lot of his times as he was coming through the college system. Things like the 10,000 meters on track was 2021 with a time of 29.14. The 3,000 meter steeplechase in 2015 was 10 minutes, so 3K in a steeplechase as 10:03. But his half marathon currently sits, his 10-kilometer road running is 29:07, and which is quick. And half marathon, as we know, he broke his personal best at 1:02:50. So he last ran indoor in the 20s, so it looks like he is shifting into that road running, distance endurance events, and it's going to be interesting to see how his progression continues. Yeah, so Christchurch Avon is his running club. So,
Yep.
Yeah.
1:02:50 at the Gold Coast. My understanding is, I think it was the 5th fastest time by a Kiwi over the half marathon distance ever.
Wow.
And he's just about 3 minutes off Zane Robinson, who holds the New Zealand half marathon record at 59 minutes, 47 seconds, I think, from memory. Again, that's just off memory, but yeah, he just knocked 2 minutes off his PB at Gold Coast. He's still got about 3 minutes to go to beat Zane Robinson's time as the number one Kiwi. But I'm backing him. I reckon he can do it.
Yeah, and
if he's running in a cooler climate too, because Gold Coast is always a bit warm and humid. So
All for a Christchurch runner though at the moment.
No, it's hot.
Warm. Yeah, it's warm.
But as you mentioned last week, Tim, what I really loved about that was that he was like, this isn't a guy coming middle of the pack or a back of the packer. This is the first 4 people, the elite runners in a half marathon, and he's having a little bit of fun. You know, he flicks, he nails it, and then he does the swoosh, you know. And just to have that, I think you mentioned presence of mind, just to have that presence of mind, just to enjoy that little moment and then just get back into the race, was just, that's what we love about him. There was a little bit of casual in there with all the seriousness. So
and it's so important. If you're not enjoying your running, then really, why do it? I don't know about everyone else, but to me, if I'm not enjoying running, then I'm doing it wrong. And I'm happy to run slower, I'm happy to run faster, but I have to enjoy it. So yeah.
So I think everyone should just get out there and try and do the Avery next time they're going through drink stations. And let's see if we can take him viral. So that's what I think.
We'll keep an eye on him over the coming months and see what he does with him. Maybe I'll try and reach out to him on Insta. I know he has an Insta page. Can't find him on Facebook. I've already tried stalking him, but maybe we'll try and reach out to him and see what he's up to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be awesome.
So I guess we've started this tradition now where Tim finishes up with this funny thing. Let's make it funnier than last week. What have you got this week, Tim?
Last week was funny. It was just the delivery was probably not right. I'm not a joke teller, but I don't know. Today's one's a bit of a dad joke, so I'm not thinking it's going to be all that funny. But anyway, have you guys heard about the Forgetful Runner?
No.
Tony, have you heard about the Forgetful Runner?
No.
He just needed somebody to jog his memory.
Oh, gosh. Out of a Christmas cracker.
That's beautiful.
But that does actually, and it's probably another topic because we're running out of time, but you know, what is the difference between jogging and running? Do we see ourselves as joggers or do we see ourselves as runners?
No difference, Tim. No difference. Anyway, Tony, what's coming up on next week's episode for us?
Pretty exciting. We've got one of our marathon mates. We had a beer with him the other day where he showed off his 6-star medal. So we are so excited to be talking with Terry Frew. He achieved his 6th marathon major star just recently in Tokyo, the same race that my panelists, Tim and Tara, ran. And he's going to share his journey and experiences. And it was really interesting because halfway through his journey, he had a hip replacement. So many people who get hip replacements are told they will never run again. Terry just said, bugger that. And he ran again. He didn't just run, but he ran through the world majors. So it's an incredible
and he
story.
Quite quick as well. So,
very
like
he's in the threes. So
Yep.
And I think there's still only 71 Kiwis, and of course Terry is an original from New Zealand, and there's only 71 New Zealanders that have achieved that, so that's pretty elite company. And hopefully between now and when we talk to him, I'll have worked out, he's been trying to work out what number he was, so whether he was in the 50s or the 60s, I don't know. but I'm sure that we'll be able to help him. But that's going to be a great episode, and I hope you can all tune in.
Absolutely. And so, like, very quickly, it feels like our second episode is now concluded. So if you've liked our show, please like and subscribe wherever you've listened and watched this episode. Video of this episode will be available on Spotify, YouTube, and the audio will be available on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. So just remember, every step forward is a victory. Lace up, hit the road, and we'll catch you for the next episode. Until then, happy running.
Bye.
See you.